Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and today we are going to be doing 3 segments as per usual. And the 3 segments are going to be an update on the NBA Allstar game and the participants in the three-point shooter, and the participants in the three-point shooting contest, as well as the first segment right now, which is going to be Austin Rivers and his advice and some things he has to say about Bronny James going into his future being an NBA athlete, as well as a quick recap of all the big games that happened last night as per usual. And we have a 4th segment that I'm going to talk about later, but so stick around for what that's going to be. And before I begin with this segment, I'd like to remind everyone, as always, to please remember to tip and donate. If you like this episode, please remember to follow and subscribe to the show. If you want to become a member or part of the show, there is a link in the description, streamelements.com/GSMC Really makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. The link will be displayed in the description below, as well as right below in the ticker. That is streamelements.com/GSMC And without further ado, let's go into the first segment of today's podcast, which will be talking about Austin Rivers and his advice to Bronny James, which is LeBron's son, if you don't know. So before I begin, I'd like to give a little bit of background on who Austin Rivers is, because not many people really remember who he is as a player, given how he was a role player, and it's something that casuals are quick to forget. But Austin Rivers is an NBA vet who spent 10 years in the NBA. He was a great role player, spent time on several different teams, but he's mainly known for his time with his father, Doc Rivers, being the head coach of the Clippers and his time on the Clippers. So that's what he's most infamous for. At the time when he was playing at the beginning of his career, he was a little bit of a wanderer until he went to the Clippers, which just so happened to be the exact same team that his father, Doc Rivers, was coaching. And it's also where he had his best seasons. No surprises there, because if you're playing with your father as the coach, you definitely have good chemistry. So there's a lot of problems that come with when you are the coach's son, because you are related to the coach. Obviously, the coach would want to see Rivers put in a position to succeed, and because of that, there's going to be talk about. There's going to be bad talk coming from the media about Austin Rivers, saying things like, oh, he's only getting minutes because his dad is the coach, for an example. Or, I can't bully him because his dad is the coach, if you were one of the players. Because I remember growing up when I was a player playing basketball in middle school, and the son was one of the players on the roster was the head coach's son, and he would get all of the minutes, and it would seem like he would get absolutely no blame for doing anything wrong. But that's just my personal experience. Now, I can't say the same for the NBA and that personal experience because it's a completely different league, so I can't say the same for him or his teammates, and not that I would even want to say anything negative about that, because there's a lot of negativity that comes when you are the coach's son. It gets so bad to the point where people think that the only reason that Austin Rivers was even in the NBA was because of his father. See, that is something that I don't agree with at all whatsoever. Criticism, if it's fair, then it's fair. But when you're saying something like, oh, this player doesn't belong in the league simply because of his father, that is unfair criticism, and you should just be thrown out of the window for that. But it got that bad for Austin Rivers, and it should be noted that if you are in the NBA, you are absolutely phenomenal at basketball. You can't just make the NBA by saying, "Oh, my dad is the coach." It's a very difficult league to make, especially now with how global it is and how so many different athletes from so many different countries are coming over to America just to play in the NBA because it is the best of the best. And NBA players are arguably the most athletic people in the world, and they could be good at just about any sport that they choose. We see it all the time in like clips from the media. DeMar DeRozan threw a football like 50 or 60 yards out. Like that's really impressive. And with this in mind, I'm saying that the only reason that Austin Rivers is in the NBA because of his father is some ridiculous levels of disrespect to his craft. Because these players spend so much time in the gym, unless you're Ben Simmons, working on their shooting, working on their offense, working on their defense, working on absolutely everything in the game. And with that in mind, saying that they've only made it because of the coach just completely throws everything that they've done and everything that they've worked for out of the window, as if everything that they've done just means nothing. And that's completely unfair. So, like, I don't agree with those criticisms to Austin Rivers. I think he is a great role player. He was a great role player, and I feel like that the criticism he got just because his dad was the coach was unfair. Now, as a coach, you wouldn't want to have someone, or you wouldn't want to coach someone on your team if they're uncoachable, right? Regardless if that's your child or not. So, with this background in mind with Austin Rivers and with Doc Rivers, Austin is worried that Bronny is going to have to go through the same kind of scrutiny that he had to go through growing up in this league. He said, the quote was, "I don't want to see Bronny play with LeBron." He says more things. "I went through something similar. Bronny's success isn't a top-tier level. I don't want that negativity to come his way." End quote. So obviously, like there was some more ranting in between that, but I couldn't fit the whole quote in just one line and in just one segment. So to basically understand what he's trying to say is that right now Bronny hasn't been putting up exactly like the great numbers that like is expected of him coming towards the playoffs. Like, well, not towards the playoffs, but in college, like he's not putting up the numbers coming towards like, approaching the NCAA tournament. He's not putting up the good numbers that you'd expect him to put up for being LeBron James' son. It's not number one pick worthy yet. It's not like number one pick in the draft yet, like his father. But his defense, on the other hand, like I don't want to talk completely bad about LeBron James' son, but his defense is some of the best I've seen in college. And not to mention he's also very athletic, and coming off of cardiac arrest, I'm not entirely sure if it's really fair to criticize him in his game as of right now, because like I mentioned earlier, coming off of cardiac arrest is not something easy to do, especially in basketball. And especially with all the media coverage being on him, since he is LeBron James' son. And it's not fair to criticize him because of that whatsoever, in my personal opinion. If he does go number one overall, as of right now, it'll be because the teams want LeBron on the team. As of right now, obviously, he still has so much more time to develop. It has so much more time to get better. But as of right now, that's the general opinion with Bronny James. If he gets drafted number one, it's because teams want LeBron on their team, and which is totally fair. So I understand where this is coming from, not wanting like the criticism from Austin Reeves. I understand where Austin Reeves is coming from, not wanting for him to deal with all of this stress and all of this pressure, especially with his name and how famous his father is. But here's the thing. Here's the difference that I think is very apparent. LeBron James is no stranger to these type of expectations. LeBron had to go through these exact same stipulations as a rookie, if not maybe even worse. Since he was 18, LeBron was expected to be the greatest player coming out of high school and the greatest player, period, since Michael Jordan. Not only has LeBron overachieved on this, but he also did it without having a single problem with anybody. There was not a single scandal around his name. The only bad thing that was allegedly happening was him taking steroids. And even then, that was allegedly. So with that in mind, and how LeBron has never gotten in trouble or in big trouble in the league, I feel like he is definitely the best equipped to teach his son to handle all of this pressure. Because, again, LeBron never cheated. He never cracked under any type of pressure from the media. And nobody expected him to end his career as the NBA's leading scorer. It was completely unexpected. And having someone like this as your father to prepare you for the NBA when the media eventually treats him exactly the same is the best kind of resource you could possibly get. The best kind of resource you can get. I don't think there is a teenager better equipped to deal with the media than LeBron James Jr. Because no other teenager other than LeBron James Jr.'s father has had to live up to these type of expectations. There's from recent memory, other than Victor Wembanyama, who is now recently taking the league by storm and expected to be this ridiculous player in the future. But other than that, it was LeBron. And the expectations surrounding him were ridiculous. I can go on and on about these expectations, but I'm not going to dwindle on it too much because we'd have a whole other 20 minutes of talking. And even then, back to what I was saying about Bronny James, it would be much easier for Bronny to adjust with LeBron as his father. I expect him to be a valuable asset to teams, but I'm not sure if he will exactly be as good as his father or better than his father. LeBron has set the bar ridiculously high in terms of skill and importance coming from a rookie. So given all of that, what I said, I do think Bronny will be able to handle all the stipulations and all the expectations. It depends on how his game progresses because like I said before, cardiac arrest, we have no idea what that stuff does to a basketball player and his psyche, a basketball player's confidence, and a basketball player's skills in general. And if he ends up being as good as his father, at least at the age, if he was as good as his father, given at the age that he is right now, there's really no argument that could be made about people saying he's in the league because of his dad. If Bronny James played like a 20-year-old LeBron James played, which was averaging about 27 points in the NBA, I know it is absolutely ridiculous, then I don't think Bronny James has anything to worry about in terms of the criticisms from the media and whatnot. Because if he is performing and he's showing everyone that he is able to perform and that he can perform, what can the media say? They can't say anything about the fact that they can't blame it on the fact that it's LeBron James's child. Because if LeBron James's child can ball, then he can ball. Role players, they could say that for Austin Rivers because Austin Rivers was sort of like a role player on a loaded Clipper squad at the time. Not to completely bash down role players, I think role players are one of the most underrated and the most important pieces to a championship-winning roster. Role players always get the most hate from fans as if they as in the fans, can do any better than what the other players are doing on the court. And I just have to disagree with that because Brian Scalabrine, this quote will be remembered in my head till the dawn of time. Brian Scalabrine said, "I am closer to LeBron than you are to me." I'm going to repeat that. I am closer to LeBron than you are to me. Not many casuals are going to remember Brian Scalabrine, so I'll just say he was another bench player who doesn't have good stats for his career. He won a championship in 2008 with the Boston Celtics, coached by Doc Rivers, by the way, and he was one of the worst players on the roster. No disrespect whatsoever, but judging off of the numbers, he didn't get much playing time. He was one of the worst. So with that in mind, someone who rides the bench in the NBA is that confident in saying that he is closer to LeBron than we, us casuals, are to him. And we fans insult players like that as if we can do better. And if any of us were in the NBA, we wouldn't score a single point unless it's off of pity. Everyone that says that they could score in the NBA is lying to themselves. It's disrespectful saying that we can score on these type of NBA athletes. Even if these players aren't as good as the starters, we should at least talk about them with respect, given all that they put into the game and the type of player that they are and all that they give up for and all the sweat and the grind and all of that type of things. We have to give respect to that. So that's it for the first segment about Austin Rivers and the words for Bronny. And we are going to go into the second segment where I give a quick update on the All-Star weekend as well as the new court that is introduced in the All-Star break. So I will be back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And we are going to give a quick update on the NBA All-Star Game and All-Star Weekend and some of the things that were just recently announced, like the three-point shooters that are going to be participating in the three-point contest, as well as the brand new NBA court. So before I begin, I'd like to remind all of you, as always, please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. Make sure you go to the following link, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Once again, the link is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. The link is in the description as well as being displayed right below in the ticker. And with that out of the way, let us go right ahead and give the update on NBA All-Star and the NBA All-Star Weekend. And first, actually, before I talk about NBA All-Star and like the rest of the updates that I want to talk about, we have an update on Joel Embiid. He's expected to be out for at least 4 weeks after his left knee procedure. So I will talk about that more in the second segment when I cover some of the games. But for now, let's talk about the NBA All-Star Weekend and the updated court, as well as the updated three-point shooters. So, as we all know, Stephen Curry is going up against Sabrina Ionescu to determine who's the better shooter between the two in the NBA and in the WNBA, because she recently broke not recently, she did it a while ago. She broke the NBA and the WNBA three-point shooting contest record for most points scored in a three-point shootout. So, with that in mind, there's some great tension between those two. I covered this on my previous podcast if you'd like to listen more about that and what I think is going to happen. But everyone knows this is happening. But what about the actual three-point contest? Like the ones where NBA players shoot. So Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard, Jalen Brunson, Lauri Markkanen, Malik Beasley, and Donovan Mitchell have all been confirmed to be participants in this three-point shooting competition. So let's go over all of these players just by names. Tyrese Halliburton, he shoots just below 40% from three and is one of the league's best point guards. He is what fans would call a true point guard, which I don't really understand whatsoever, because they call him that because he does a lot of passes and his playmaking is really good in terms of like passing the ball. He really likes passing the ball. However, just because you can create good looks for your teammates, like that's a major part of playmaking, but it shouldn't define the entirety of playmaking. You're not picking up what I'm putting down, are you? Like, he's a playmaker, But there are other point guards who are also playmakers, who they make plays for their teammates and they have the ability to make plays for themselves. So we need to encompass playmaking as a broader scale, not so much as making better looks for your teammates, but also making a play for yourself when your team needs it. Saying he's a true point guard and the only one in this league is kind of disrespectful to some of these guards that can create shots for themselves as well as create shots for his teammates. Playmaking shouldn't just be for making plays, like for the teammates. It should be also by making plays for yourself. That's why it's called playmaking, so that way you can make a play. A great example of this is Trae Young. He is a well-known shot maker. He's a well-known shot creator, and because he's like well known as being a shot creator, a lot of people associate him to taking a lot of these difficult half-court shots, these difficult floaters, these difficult runners, all these types of shots. But at the same time, even though he's a shot maker, he can play make. He can create looks for others as well as create looks for himself. But he's not even in the talks of being one of the elite playmakers, which is incredibly disrespectful for someone who averages 27 and 12 almost every single season. It's called playmaking. But I digress. So Tyrese is also one of the point guards who has range, making him a very popular choice for this contest. He loves to pull up from deep, deep. And the concern for Halliburton in this competition, at least for me, is his shooting motion. When compared to the rest of the participants, his shooting motion isn't necessarily as fluid as you would expect. And when you're in a three-point shooting contest, it's all dependent on rhythm. It's a lot easier for a shooter to get into rhythm if he has a fluid motion, rather than if he were to have a choppy motion, similar to Tyrese Halliburton. Now, Tyrese's motion is a bit choppy, therefore could make getting into a rhythm difficult, just like how it was last year for when Dame was able to knock him down and beat Tyrese in the three-point shootout. As I mentioned before, Dame is one of the favorites in winning this three-point contest, seeing as he won the last one. I don't like discrediting these NBA players, but I will say that, in my opinion, Dame has been a little bit overrated this season just because he can pull up from the half-court line. Now, Damian Lillard, great regular season player, but he is the dollar store version of Steph Curry in the sense that he likes taking these 30-footers, but he doesn't like making them at an efficient rate compared to Steph. Like, he's a dollar store version, so it's like he's just as good, but it's like not as efficient, not as consistent. He has somehow snagged the reputation of being a clutch performer despite having really bad playoff numbers. His 2 game-winning shots against Houston and OKC are the 2 that define his clutchness and will continue to live on. He'll continue to live off of those shots. To his credit, he was great in those 2 first-round series and in 2021 versus Denver, but the rest of his postseason career has been pretty bad. It's similar to how the media treats Jimmy Butler. Jimmy recently only played well in the first round against the Milwaukee Bucks. Only played phenomenally in that first round. He played up to his expectations in round 2. Then in round 3, he played a little bit mediocre. And then in the finals, he played exceptionally bad. Not to mention that his time in the bubble, the media was saying things like, he doesn't shoot shots until the fourth quarter. That was the narrative around Jimmy Butler in the bubble. And the thing that I just kept asking myself is, why would a player take a good shot? Why would a player not take a good shot at any point in the game and just save it for the fourth quarter? That didn't make any sense to me. If the shot is a good shot and it's open, a player is going to take that. Like, you're telling me that Jimmy Butler was holding out until the fourth quarter? Similar to Dame, his clutch reputation comes from 2 postseason runs, which is very unfair, given how a lot of these players don't necessarily have that clutch reputation and play better in the postseason and have more success in the postseason. So, given that, I think it's a little bit unfair to give Damian Lillard that clutch reputation just off of those few series, but I digress. So, since he did win in the last three-point contest, who has the best odds to beat him? Let's continue down this list. Jalen Brunson He is he's one of my favorite point guards this season, and he's actually the guard that I hope is going to end up winning this competition. He shoots 41% from three, and is the main reason why New York and the Knicks are relevant in basketball now. And he's become a major threat from out there. With this in mind, given Dame not being the same sniper as he normally is for this year, as he is in previous years, I think Jalen Brunson should be the one to bet on winning this competition. That is my personal opinion, given how Damian Lillard has been struggling this season. Like, is it entirely his fault? Some of it, yes, but he's been struggling from three this season. Now, the next participant, Lauri Markkanen, I never really get to talk about him on this show, so I will say that he is criminally underrated. Absolutely criminally underrated. He's averaging 23 on 50, 40, and 88 shooting splits. Unfortunately, he's on the Utah Jazz, which is why he doesn't get that much coverage from the media. Being that it's Karl Malone's former team, I wouldn't really want to cover them that much either. He had 28 and 10 in the loss to Philly, but he helped the Jazz in a comeback win against the Milwaukee Bucks. He's a very good player, a very good shooter. He is all-star caliber. He was an all-star last year. He was good enough and he's definitely good enough to make it this year. But granted, all of the talent that's left in this league, as well as media coverage, it's very difficult for someone like Lauri Markkanen to make it into the all-star game. He participated in the competition last year as well. So let's see now if he can finally get over that hump and actually win the competition. He's also the only player in this competition that isn't a point guard or that isn't a guard. Malik Beasley, while he doesn't necessarily have the star notoriety as the rest of the players do, he is definitely shooting the best out of all of them. He's shooting a career best 45% from the field, and has the highest percentage among all the three-point shooting participants. And to give credit to the other players, every other player that isn't Beasley is a volume shooter. So I'm just giving credit to where credit is due with all these players. They're all volume shooters, meaning they tend to be the ones taking the most shots on their team. So it's no surprise that in the end, their shooting is going to end up being a little bit worse than his, and their averages are going to be a little bit worse than his because they're taking more shots than him, and the shots they take also tend to be a lot more difficult and contested. Recently, Donovan Mitchell was also announced separately from the rest of the group mentioned. I don't know why. I also don't know why he wants to partake in this contest. Like, I personally view him as like the dunker type, but he won the dunk contest as a rookie. So maybe now he wants to expand his repertoire and move on to 3-point shooting and win the 3-point contest. I always considered Donovan more of a dunker, like I said, than he is a shot maker, but I'm not going to sit here and act like he is not a shot maker and that shot making is not one of his strengths, because it 100% is. Overall, everybody included on this list is great, and I'm looking forward to see who ends up on top. However, we all know that the attention is going to be on Curry going against Sabrina Ionescu. I don't know when that competition will take place, if it'll happen before the regular 3-point contest, in the middle, or after, but we'll see how they're going to go with it. We're not done updating you all on All-Star Weekend, however. As you all know, the NBA All-Stars will be coming at us with the exact same type of format, East versus West, but what we didn't know is that they're going to be coming at us with a different court as well. So it's going to be an interactive LED glass court for this year's All-Star Weekend, and I think this is sort of a means to try to make the All-Star games a bit more interesting. And like the courts they're very, very bright. And let me know in the comments, like when you see the images, let me know in the comments if you think this inclusion was necessary or if this inclusion was unnecessary. So to me, it looks like the courts if you guys play NBA 2K, if you go to Ante-Up, you'll notice how sometimes when you get a block, on the bottom of the court, it'll display a brick wall, or it'll say block party. Or if you're shooting a 3 and you make a 3, it'll be like a bullseye that pops up on the court, signifying that you made a 3. So it might be a little bit like that. I personally think that it will make the All-Star game a little bit more interesting, and like as well as like other competitions that are happening in the league, because it's not just the All-Star game that this court is going to be used for. It's going to be used for the three-point contest. It's going to be used for the celebrity game. It's going to be used for the Rising Stars game, all of that. And I believe that it's going to make it a lot more interesting. And the problem with these All-Star games is that like the viewers get bored because the game isn't necessarily that competitive to begin with. I'm not sure if that's something that can be helped, but adding other things that could make it less boring doesn't hurt in the slightest. And I feel like this is one of those types of inclusions. They tried to make it less boring by adjusting the format, but that ended up backfiring and they reverted to this original format. So now that they decided to try to change the court that these players play on, I'm curious to see what kind of designs and funny new gimmicks that the NBA is going to include with these new court designs, because they get to be really flexible now. And I'm sure a lot of these NBA sponsors are going to be present on the court. Will this make the game a bit more interesting? Not entirely sure, but I'm not going to even lie to you. The All-Star game gets me very bored. Like, I'm bored the second I see Giannis catch the 5th lob of the night. And I sort of like the competitive aspect of last format, because it looked like the players wanted to win, and it was a lot more of a street ball game in the end. Me personally, what I want to see, for instead of the All-Star games, I think they should be turned into a big 3-on-3 tournament. And they use that court with LED lights and stuff to like promote that big tournament. But it should be a big 3-on-3. Like, you get all the All-Stars to vote in, you get the lineups, and then you get all those players get to pick their own team, they get to get other 2 players on their team to make their own 3-on-3 team, and they go up against all of each other in a big 3-on-3 tournament that lasts throughout All-Star break or just lasts throughout the day in All-Star break. I personally think that would be much more enjoyable to watch, and because watching an entire game of basketball is not, it's very time consuming, and it's even more time consuming when the players don't seem to care or want to win, like when there's no competitive aspect. So I really think a 3-on-3 tournament would be much better to watch. That's my personal opinion on it, though. But with that, we are out of time for this second segment. Tune in to the third segment where I give a recap on the last night in NBA basketball, as well as the fourth segment, which I will reveal after the third segment. So stay tuned for that, but I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And we are at the third segment, so now we're going to do a quick little recap of last night on NBA basketball. Just talk about the biggest stories from last night's games, some of the best scorers, obviously, like the narratives behind some of these teams, and what to expect going into the future with some of these teams. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off right now and start with my Brooklyn Nets. They ended up losing to Golden State. Our offense was absolutely horrible. And I was just talking crazy about Cam yesterday on the podcast about how good he was over the weekend. Now he decides to put up a 4 for 21 performance with 18 points. I guess that's what I get for being... You can't have anything nice in New York. You just can't. And this is a problem with Cam. He's a great scorer, but can be a bit inconsistent. And since he doesn't really have the defense to back it up, if he's not getting 30 or 40 points, it's not good for his team. Everyone forgot how to shoot in this game. Not just my team, but also Golden State as well. The only player that was able to hit a 3 on Golden State was Stephen Curry. No surprises there, but Bridges went 5 of 15 and only had 13 points. We were building houses out there. It was just a competition to see who can build the most houses. Ben Simmons didn't play this game. I think he was scared of Draymond punching him in the face. But it's all just jokes. But he didn't. He seriously didn't play this game. I don't know why, but he's just going to cause more unnecessary stress to me, and I'm just going to try my best to ignore him, but I really can't. A lot of you might question if he's really injured. He's day-to-day, which essentially just means that he plays when he feels like it. That's what it feels like to me as a fan, but if he actually is injured, I hope he definitely gets better, but it's Ben Simmons. Like, we all know how he is. He just chooses not to play. It's so difficult to watch. It is so infuriating to watch somebody that is 6'10" not want to play. This is like the 9th time on this podcast where I'm begging him to please get off my team. But I digress. Golden State absolutely murdered us on the offensive side of the court. Curry ended with 29. Kuminga ended with 28. Green and Clay ended with 8, but Draymond had 10 rebounds to go with. I talked about Golden State before on my last podcast, mentioning how they need to get, if they want to win, they should probably get rid of Klay Thompson because he is bringing negative value to the team. And as of right now, I'm proving to be right. Steve Kerr benched him late in the fourth. He's usually known for hitting these big shots when you need it, but he sat out in this one. It was really tough for him to watch as well, as he just mentioned towards the media. He shot 4 of 9 from the field, which technically isn't that bad, but he went 0 for 3 from 3 and ended with more shot attempts than points. And as I said before, when you end with more shot attempts than points, you didn't have a good night. And I don't think if you... that I will say this constantly, over and over and over again. If you end the game with more shot attempts than you do points, you didn't have a good night. That's negative production for your team. That's just possessions you are wasting and hurting the team by not knocking down the shot. He sat out in the fourth because of this, they ended up winning the game in the end. Kuminga calling out Steve Kerr is probably one of the best things I've ever seen in my entire life, because Kuminga straight up complained to the media saying, I don't get that many minutes. That's all his fault. More or less, I'm paraphrasing, but he was complaining about not getting enough minutes. And Steve Kerr answered by giving him the minutes. And he is producing so much better now with those minutes than he was without those minutes. And I think it's probably the most badass thing I've seen an NBA player do. But right now, other than Kuminga, Steph is the only real reliable piece on this offense. The Warriors are looking worse than the Brooklyn Nets right now. I can't even lie. They're looking worse than us right now in terms of standings, which is very sad, seeing how they still have Curry playing some of his best basketball. And Golden State should hurry up and trade if they do plan to move on from Clay, and if they do plan to win and salvage the most of what they can from Stephen Curry. In other news, Los Angeles, the Lakers, they finally won it. They won back-to-back. Yay! They did it. And guess what? They did it with LeBron and Anthony Davis. It was an easy win against a bottom feeder for the East. LeBron played 40 minutes again, and he got 26, 7, and 4. Anthony Davis ended with his third career triple-double, going 26, 11, and 15. D'Lo also showed up tonight with 28 points. And in absolutely no surprise to anyone who knows anything about basketball or isn't a casual or isn't a hater, the rest of the Lakers didn't show up. Wow! It's almost like the game against Boston was a fluke. Reeves ended the game going 3 of 9, only getting 9 points. What happened to all the trade talks? What happened to that? It was one good game that the Lakers had and immediately went to trade talks about LeBron. And now LeBron is back and they won 2 straight in a row. It is not his fault. It was not his fault. It's never been his fault. The trade talks need to stop now. The players can't be consistent. Like I mentioned before, when they put LeBron and Anthony Davis in the lineup, they just forgot how to play basketball. They can't be consistent without him. What makes you think that they'll be consistent without him? There's no proof that we have of that. Just one game against Boston Celtics? No. This would never happened. The trade talks would have never happened if they didn't blow out the Boston Celtics at home. And it doesn't matter how bad the Charlotte Hornets are, all the more reason for the players on this team to step up. But no, it was LeBron and AD. Let's let LeBron and AD do everything like we let them do every single game. It is infuriating. But I digress. Darvin Ham finally listened to me, or the media. I don't know who he listened to, but he put Roy in the starting lineup, and he didn't play that crazy. He only went 4 of 6, but that was definitely better production than what they were getting from their last starters. And so far, he's been great. The consistency from him has been phenomenal. These Lakers need to get better at shooting threes, however. They only made 8 of them tonight, and that will hurt them come playoff time. Brandon Miller ended with 33 points, and somebody else on the Charlotte Hornets also ended with 41. I absolutely refuse to say his full name given to his history with his ex-wife. I will not mention his name whatsoever, and in fact, I'm going to stop talking about him right now. 2 people on the Charlotte Hornets, Brandon Miller and the other guy, had over half of the shot attempts from the team. Now, the Lakers, when they have Bron and Anthony Davis, they don't even do that. The Lakers, now this is obviously a problem for Charlotte, given how bad they are as a team and how below average they are as a team. They really don't have much working for them. They're fighting for a draft pick. That's essentially what it is, as sad to say. But the Lakers getting ready to play the Nuggets, so depending on how that game goes will depend on how my opinion for this team changes. But you guys know what I think about Los Angeles. They'll either barely make the play-in or miss the play-in in the end, wasting another year of LeBron in his prime. This lineup needs to do a trade, and they need to do it now. In recent news, the Mavs beat the Sixers 118-102. I mentioned previously in the last segment, we updated you guys on Joel Embiid and his injury. He will be out a minimum of 4 weeks at least. I believe it's going to be longer. I predict it's going to be a little bit longer than just 4 weeks. But right now, the Sixers aren't really in a good spot. Kyrie remembered that he was a basketball player and finally decided to play a game against Philly. He was injured, so that's just a little joke. But he led the team in scoring with 23 points. Luka wasn't that efficient from the field tonight, only getting 19, going 6 of 15. But it was enough to win the game in the end and to win the game in a blowout. I may have given the players a bit too much credit for their close games. I may have given the Sixers a little bit too much credit for their close games that they've had against some of the good teams. So far, Oubre hasn't been doing well producing, and neither has Tyrese Maxey. In fact, Maxey ended with 15 points on 6 for 16. That's just not ideal if you are the Sixers. Now that he's going to be the number 1 option for at least 4 weeks, he has to look to be more aggressive and to be more consistent if the Sixers want to keep their playoff hopes alive, and when or if Embiid comes back. And just a little bit more on that. I personally don't think that the Sixers should even bother trying to bring Embiid back. I feel like the Sixers should try and just, hold him out until next season and just wait until next season. Next year should be the year that they're competing. With how top-heavy this Eastern Conference is, I don't think now is a good time to just force Embiid to recover quickly from that meniscus injury. He's always injured in the playoffs. So what's the point in trying to bring him back from an injury if he's most likely going to get injured again in the postseason? I think they should just wait. Just a little bit. Just wait until next season. I understand you want to win now. You've been disappointed several years before and you want to win now. But now is not going to be the time, given how top-heavy this Eastern Conference is. Now is definitely not the time whatsoever. And unless this team figures it out, but they as of right now, it doesn't look like these guys are going to figure it out in terms of chemistry and in terms of production. In other news, a team that has figured it out, though, the Cleveland Cavaliers. A big win last night from Cleveland. They blew out the Sacramento Kings. Donovan Mitchell had 28 points. Mobley had 11 and 14. Strus had 22. Jared Allen ended with 19, and all the starters were in double figures. Garland only took 7 shots this game, but he made them count, making 4 of them and getting 11 points. Garland is still working his way through injury, so it'll take time for him to get back to his usual production. With this win, however, the Cavs moved to the 2nd seed in the East. Now it's time for the Bucks to hit that panic button, because now the Bucks just lost their 2nd seed spot. The Cavs have won 14 out of the last 15 games and are looking absolutely unstoppable. These Kings aren't a joke either. Sabonis is 7th in the MVP ladder, even though he didn't get selected to be in the All-Star game for whatever reason, and ended the game with 12, 15, and 19, which is ridiculous. This is what Ben Simmons should be doing on the team, but no, God forbid. But I digress. The Kings are 5th in the West, and at the moment, I think they will stay there. They are a good team that lacks a lot of playoff experience. So they have experience, but not a lot. So the Cavs being able to beat them definitely puts them in talks as being one of the teams we should be worried about making noise in the postseason. And another team that we should also be worried about making noise is the Clippers. And the Clippers continue to win. They beat the Hawks 149 to 144. I know that is a lot of scoring and a little of defense from both sides, which I'm very surprised. I figured the Clippers side of the ball would be much more strong on the defensive side, but it doesn't matter. A win is a win is a win. Sorry, I needed a breath. Pardon me. But Harden ended the game with 30 and 10. Kawhi ended with 36, and Paul George ended with 18. The entire starting lineup combined for 110 points, which is amazing. Young dropped 25 and 12, once again showing why he deserves to be an All-Star. DeJounte Murray ended the game with 21 points, and DeAndre Hunter ended the game with 27 points, only missing 2 shots. Obviously, this Hawks team isn't necessarily going to be going deep into the playoffs. They are a play-in team. But with the roster that they have, I'm not entirely sure if they will make that much noise in the playoffs. They just don't have enough pieces to make a big run like in 2021. I think trading DeJounte is going to be their best bet in terms of acquiring pieces to see what other players they can bring in now that DeJounte Murray has the value and they can build through the draft, but as of right now, it's looking really rough for the Hawks. The Clippers, on the other hand, are looking like the best team in the NBA right now. Given that they rank number 1 in power rankings, I guess that's a bit obvious, but what do I always say about this team? I need to see it come playoffs. I'm not going to put them as favorites whatsoever until I see some notable improvement in the playoffs. I'm not entirely sure if their defense is as efficient as it was before, at least between Paul George and Kawhi, given how they put all of their energy on offense. Makes sense that the defense from both of them might be a little bit weaker, but I need to see this kind of performance in the playoffs before I make any kind of judgment. And just to elaborate, I mean past the second round. They can't go another year falling short of expectations. They just can't, because then I will legitimately believe that that franchise is just cursed, because there's no other explanation around it. I'm incredibly superstitious, and similar to how I believe that the Jets will never have a good quarterback, it's similar to how I think that the Clippers are going to end up falling short every single time. And there's history to back this up, so it's not like I'm just pulling this out of the air. And I really don't like constantly saying this, but I've seen too much basketball and too much to deny this. Like, I've seen way too much, and I've seen too much football to deny that the Jets just never have a good quarterback. Because there are just so many times where there's literally no explanation for the team losing a playoff series other than the fact that they're cursed. There's, like, no other explanation. Like, in the bubble when Kawhi and Paul George turned the series into a 3-1 series lead and then ended up losing that series. It was just proof. Like, what can go wrong will go wrong with that team. That's sort of the takeaways that I've gotten from that. And we're running out of time, so I'm just going to briefly skim over this next game where the Pelicans beat the Raptors. Not really much to say about the story. It's a great team going against a mediocre team in the Raptors. Brandon Ingram ended with 41, CJ ended with 20, Zion ended with 16. The game was never really close, and to start the game and to end the game. The Pelicans are going to be a playoff team, obviously, so going to have to see like how this season is going to progress going later into the season, see how they perform, and like we haven't really seen them all together in the postseason yet. in terms of like in a deep postseason run together. That's what I mean. We haven't seen them in a deep postseason run. So I'm not entirely sure if they'll make it out of the first round this year, given how top heavy this given how much competition there is in this Western Conference. So with that in mind, I'm not necessarily sure what the ceiling is for this team. And obviously, I know the ceiling for the Toronto Raptors. They aren't going to go anywhere in the East. And they should just spend this year to rebuild. They have Scotty Barnes, which is a great asset, so they should rebuild around him and hopefully bring in more pieces to help him and his chances in winning the title. So with that, we are out of time for this third segment. So tune into this fourth segment where I talk about Doc Rivers and the coaching experiment that he always brings. So I'm just going to give a brief rundown of Doc Rivers and his coaching history simply because of a quote that he mentioned. I will mention the quote in the fourth segment, but I will be right back after this short break.